This is the Wandering Mike.
Welcome everyone to the Wandering Mike. Today I'm here with Dan. Hey Dan, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you today, Mike?
Pretty good. It's a nice and beautiful day, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Think it's gonna be an interesting one, maybe an inspiring one. Um, so to get us started, Dan, if you just wanna introduce yourself quickly, tell us about your life, your journey, anything you want to share there.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I'm a podcast host as well. I'm an author of 4 books. Um, I'm a speaker, and maybe one of the more interesting things about me is the fact that my wife and I live in an RV full time, and we travel throughout the country, throughout the U.S. and Canada, and we base a lot of our destinations around book signing events and speaking events that I'm doing throughout the country. But honestly, just you know, love meeting people and hearing their stories and sharing our story. Um, and you know, love sitting in and having conversations with other podcast hosts.
Great. Um, so yeah, as you said, that's definitely a very interesting part of the RV life. So maybe if you wanna take us through that journey a little bit, what was it that got you interested in doing this? Yeah, what sparked that lifestyle?
Okay, so yeah, I never really had a you know lifelong desire to do this. My wife and I were not weekend campers. We've been doing this now for 4.5 years, and it was really more of
Wow.
a more of a calling than it was an aspiration because I'd run a nonprofit youth sports organization for 30 years. Absolutely loved every minute of what I was doing. We were, making a positive effect on kids' lives. We were, a positive influence on kids' lives and, really changing lives for the better. And it was something that I, again, absolutely loved doing. And if you would have talked to me in you know, 2018, I would have told you that that's, you know, that would be my vocation till the day I died. And then in early 2019, I actually took 2 road trips. Um, one was from Pennsylvania, where we're originally from, down to Dallas, Texas, to attend the American Baseball Coaches Association convention. And on the way back,
Mm.
I uh, I went through Louisiana and stopped to see some friends and back to Pennsylvania. And about a month or 2 later, I did the same thing to Orlando, Florida, drove down, um, saw one of my former players in Atlanta, went to Orlando to attend the function I was attending, and then drove back. And, those 2 trips, I kinda had this aha moment, and just to back up a little bit further is back in the 1980s, my mother took an old 1967 Plymouth Valiant. She took the back seat out of it, put a sheet of plywood in there and a mattress, and kind of turned it into a quasi RV and traveled all around the country on her own. And on those 2 trips that I took, I kind of had this aha moment where I said to myself, I think I finally figured out why mom did what she did. And this was, almost 15 years after she had passed away. Um, But there was such an incredible serenity in the drive and being on the road. It was one of the first times in my life that I actually took time to enjoy the journey. I scheduled a couple extra days to get to each destination. So, even though I had to be there at a certain time, I had plenty of time to be there. So I could stop along the way. And, on the way to Dallas, I stopped in Memphis and checked out the town of Memphis and again, on the way back, stopped to see some friends. On the way to Orlando, I stopped to see my one player. I got off the interstate for a little bit and, enjoyed some secondary highways and stuff like that, which was a lot of the way that my mom traveled when she traveled. And then the second component is when I got home from each of those trips, I was actually in the process of adding 10 chapters to my first book, which I had originally published in 2012. And when I got back, I had started writing again like I hadn't written in years. And that's when I started hearing this voice that it was time for a new chapter, time to turn a page, time to, you know, leave what I was doing and, start using my written word and my voice to, create a positive impact on, even more lives than what I was doing on the field, so to speak. And initially, I rejected that. I didn't want to hear it. Like I said, I loved what I did. It was my life's work. It was an organization that I'd founded. It had been part of my life
Mm,
for over 60% of the time that I had been on Earth. Um, and again, I thought it was, where I was supposed to be. And, I thought it was where I would remain. So it took a long time for me to actually buy into the concept of closing that chapter of my life and starting something new. But I just kept hearing that voice. And, whether you want to say it was God or the universe or, higher power, there was definitely something telling me that it was time to make a move. Um, so once I actually bought in, I ran the idea by my wife, and she thought I'd lost my mind. She thought it was a terrible idea.
yeah,
She was like, "Hey, that's not, that was your mom's story. It wasn't, you know, wasn't our story. It's not supposed to be our story." Um,
mm,
but she was also going through some issues at her place of employment where um, she was hired. She had been laid off from a previous job where she'd been for 23 years, and she was hired at another place where she was supposed to be brought in as a temp employee and then um, moved to full time. And that just wasn't happening. She'd been at the position for over 2 years or going on 2 years. And every time she'd have the conversation about, going to a full time position, they would kind of just, sidestep the conversation or come up with a reason as to why that couldn't happen.
mm,
And one day she came home from work after one of those conversations and she said, okay, maybe this is a sign for me as well that this door is not opening,
mm,
so let's go ahead and do this. So we put the plan into motion. I let the board of my organization know that 2019 would be my last year. And, we started, just kind of slowly putting the pieces in place. And then at the beginning of 2020, we put our house on the market. Uh, COVID hit. We took our house off the market. We uh,
oh,
we still
truth.
we still ended up buying our RV the day that the governor of Pennsylvania was issuing the shutdown orders for the state, which was definitely not part of our plan to have an RV, sitting in our yard indefinitely and have a payment on that and have a payment on our house yet. That was not part of the plan, but yet it still felt so right as we were doing it, and kind of allowed us to put, our faith over our fear, so to speak. And when the housing market opened up again in Pennsylvania, it our house was sold 10 days after we put it back on the market. We ended up settling on it in the middle of August, and on August 14th, 2020, we jumped in the RV and we haven't looked back since.
Nice. Um, so yeah, to maybe take it back before we actually talk about the RV life as well, because um what you mentioned, what you did before, is also super interesting. So you mentioned the organization you had for children, coaching them. Um, I feel like that's the start of a theme that we will see in your life, as well as just helping people. But to to ask a question, how important do you think sports actually is and can be in helping children, teaching them important lessons?
I think it's incredibly integral in their development if it's done the right way. And sadly, we do live in a time now where um, a lot of coaches approach the game with a win at all cost mentality, and
Mm,
that's not really the way that life is. And I always took the approach of teaching life lessons through the game. Every time one of my teams stepped on the field, we were playing to win, and we were leaving everything out there in order to win that game. However, that wasn't the first and foremost goal of our organization. It was really teaching the life lessons through the game. So, we played to win, but we played to teach, more importantly. And we would use losses as teaching moments. Um, and we were very big on um, teaching fundamentals and teaching the little things and making our players understand that if they did all of the little things in practice, then once they got to the game, everything else would fall into place. And if we continued to do the little things correctly, the big things, the wins, would follow. And if the wins didn't follow, then what broke down in that process that you know
mm.
didn't put us on top on the scoreboard at the end of the game. And sometimes it could just be that the opponent was just that much better than us. Like there's going to be times in life and in the game where all the preparation in the world, you're just not physically as good as the opponent that you're facing, and they're going to beat you. And that is what it is. And you got to face that, and you got to respect that, and you got to just tip your hat to them at the end of the game and say, okay, now what do we need to do to get more like them so that the next time we face them, we will be more competitive, we will beat them, and that sort of thing. So I think if it's done right, sports are so integral. I mean, there's so many times throughout my life where I could take a lesson that I learned on the field and apply it to something that was happening in life. Um, and again, I just think that's so important and such a good way to approach it. Um, and again, sadly, there's just not enough coaches out there um, today that approach it in that way. And honestly, when I say not enough, if there's not 100% of the coaches approaching it that way, there's not enough.
Yes. I I totally agree. And maybe just to share a little story, I was very amazed by the sport culture in the United States because when I was going to high school back in Germany, where I'm from, I also got to spend 1 year in high school in Virginia, and I wanted to join the football team at all costs. I was like, I'm in America, I'm in the United States, I need to play football, and we had an amazing coach, Coach Gale. He since has passed away uh, due to cancer, sadly, but he was such a great coach. And for me, the one thing that I really loved was the community as well. It's like you have all these boys on the field together, and it's like a family. Like you
Absolutely.
really go through everything together. That's yeah, I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah, and that's still something that, we've been blessed to experience in our travels is that, I've got players that literally are scattered throughout the country. And
Mm,
we've been able to connect with them and, have dinner and see them as parents and see them as husbands and wives. And, a lot of times as a coach, you're planting those seeds and you don't always have the opportunity to see them bloom. And my wife and I have been blessed
mm,
to be able to see them bloom and continue to be a part of their lives and have them tell me that I've been an incredible influence on their life and they wouldn't be the person they were today if it wasn't for some of the lessons that they learned on the field from me. So that's been incredibly rewarding for us. And again, it's just been such a blessing to be able to experience that, and know that you did make a difference in their lives.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful part because, again, speaking from someone who, played under a coach who also was very passionate, like, we can tell, like, the players can tell that as well, and they see the passion, and yeah, it's just, playing together, and, they appreciate it, you appreciate it, and then it's becomes this beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was Maya Angelou has a quote, "People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." And I think that is such a great lesson for coaches and teachers, in particular, because, you know, I mean, I created a culture of family from the beginning. Um, and those players knew that I loved them and that I cared for them as human beings off the field, more so than any accomplishment we would achieve together on the field. And I think when they know that, and the way you're talking about your old football coach, who I believe it sounds like you only played one season for him, and he made this tremendous impact on your
Yeah,
life. I mean, that's pretty special. So when
it's
when you go in and you create that culture, your players can buy into that pretty quickly, and they understand that you're going to have their back under any circumstances. I mean, I've had players, you know, call me when they were struggling with school. They were struggling in a certain subject, or call me if they were having a fight with their girlfriend. And I always picked up the phone. I was always 100% present when we'd have those conversations. And I think that went a long way in the relationship that we had, both on and off the field.
yeah. Um, well, to transition again a little bit to the RV lifestyle, you already mentioned, that you have players all across the country. So, and for someone not originally being from the United States, um, I just feel like the United States, North America in general, is just a great country for that kind of lifestyle because it's so huge, so with so much variety as well. Um, do you feel the same that there's just in your own country just so much for you to discover?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. And the US, like you said, is so massive in just, you know, geographic square miles in general. And then within that, we have all of these different subcultures, where, talking to someone in Michigan is a completely different conversation than talking to someone in Alabama, or talking to someone in California is a different conversation than talking to someone in Florida. This past summer, we had the opportunity to travel up through Alaska and went up through Western Canada, through Alberta, the BC, the Yukon, and into Alaska. And again, just a completely different culture up there, and just the massiveness of land volume. Um, it's hard to fathom if you don't experience it, and to know that, you know, Texas can fit inside of Alaska with so much room to spare. Yeah. And
Mm.
it was an incredible experience for us. And again, a completely different culture in Alaska than anything we've ever experienced in the lower 48. Um, so yeah, that's one of the things that we'll never take for granted, is that, you know, we know we're never going to see it all because there's just so much to see, but we're definitely going to enjoy what we can see. That's for sure.
Right. Um, maybe if you want, we can talk a little bit about Alaska because that's actually one state that I never visited. I did see a lot of the United States as well. mostly as a tourist, obviously, which is completely different to how you get to experience the country. But yeah, I've never made it to Alaska. So maybe if you just share your experience there a little bit, what was it that was like super amazing about Alaska? What did you find there that was different to the other states?
What One of the things that really took me by surprise, because this wasn't something I learned in school, um, was the amount of rainforest that is in Alaska. Like Valdez is a
Oh,
rainforest, and when you're coming in off of these massive, glaciers and mountains and stuff in the distance, and all of a sudden you hit this lush green area of waterfalls and, literally,
mm,
the forest was, weeping with dew all the time. It was truly a rainforest. Totally blew me away. I did not expect that at all. Um, and again, just you know, the the quality of the roads is not great because you've got constant, frost heaves in the winter where, they'll freeze and the macadam will break up. So the next summer they're spent, repairing, that section of the road that got damaged by frost. And, I said, if you ever want job
mm,
security, move to Alaska and work on a road crew because you will be constantly working up there, repairing frost heaves. Um, and then just the fact that, like the infrastructure itself is so much different than anything in the lower 48. I mean, even when you get around
mm,
Anchorage, which is the biggest town in Alaska, I think a little over 300,000 people, um, there's no major highways or interstates up there. I mean, they're all, for the most part, 2-lane highways. There's, little stretch of 4-lane highway around Anchorage. But that's literally probably the only spot that we hit 4-lane highway was in and around Anchorage. Everything else is just 2-lane highway. And, traffic just is pretty much non-existent for the most part, again, in Anchorage with the population there, it was, a bit more than anywhere else. But, um, if you're traveling from Talkeetna to Denali, you're on a 2-lane road and, you'll pass another car every 3 or 4 miles, so I think those are probably, and that just goes again to the number of people there compared to the sheer volume of land. Um, it's hard to fathom. I think the entire population of Alaska is right around 600,000, 700,000, something like that. And, to think of that
oh
amount of
well.
people and look at you know, the land mass really kind of puts it into perspective. And then, you'll travel as you go from town to town, in the lower 48, you hit, you know, if you're going from one destination to the other, you hit, you know, 30, 40 other little towns on your way to that destination. Where in
Mm,
Alaska, you can go, 60, 70, 100 miles before you hit the next quote unquote town where it's literally just desolate highway that you're driving along and no cell service, no signal, no 5G. We didn't have, as a matter of fact, we didn't have 5G the entire time we were in Alaska. We would get some sections of 4G, but 5G was
mm,
absolutely non-existent throughout Alaska and Western Canada for that matter. So that's probably the biggest
cool.
takeaways from our trip to Alaska. But yeah, if you haven't been there, definitely make some plans in the future to get there because it's an experience like none other for sure.
All right. Yeah, definitely put it on the list. Um, from how you described it, and I am genuinely asking, I have no idea, but do you think because obviously there's beautiful landscapes all over the US, there's magnificent national parks and stuff like that. But do you feel like Alaska is living more in tune with nature than maybe the other states do?
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. The vast population up there still lives off the land quite a bit. Um,
Mm,
the salmon run is very important to them, where they'll literally fish and you know stock up on salmon for you know a months in advance, to have food for the winter. Again, stuff that we don't even think about in more um, more population areas that we live in. We just think, you need something, just run to the grocery store and pick it up. Um,
yeah,
the so like major grocery stores up there again are few and far between. So it's again just that lifestyle of living off the land and respecting the land and understanding that they are, truly one, with nature. And even when, you talk about like the salmon run and the natives up there, fishing for the winter, um, they're still not like hoarding
mm,
stuff. I mean, they're literally fishing for what's going to feed them and their family, for the next couple months.
right.
So there's a different level of respect with nature than what we've seen in any other place.
All right. Um, so through your travels, you meet so many different people. May, yeah, it's a difficult question, because there must be so many impressions that you've had, but maybe to take it to the similarity type, do you see like an overarching theme in the people you meet? Maybe, even though, like you said, everyone is so different. But at the end, we're also all humans. So yeah, I'm just wondering if there's like a theme that you discover over and over.
There definitely is, and I think that's been one of the most refreshing things for us is just being able to sit down and have conversations with people and understand that, yes, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. Um, we all want to be loved. We want the ability to provide for our family. We want, to be able to love who we want to love and, be treated with respect and treat others with respect. And, the fact that we live in such a polarized society, I think when you get the chance to sit down and have conversations with individual people, you will understand that
I mean,
the minority of people are very loud and the majority of people are very quiet and just want to do the right thing and, you know, provide, and that we all have those same um, wants and needs and desires as human beings. And so it's refreshing to be able to step away from mainstream media and the talking heads, who are constantly looking to
mm,
divide us and create that division and, sit down and, um, have conversations with people who, you know, regardless of what side of the political spectrum they may be on, you understand that they really are a lot like you. Um, so definitely one of the things I encourage other people to do is just get out and have conversations with people who don't necessarily, look like them or sound like them. And you're going to find out that when you really dig into some of those layers, they actually probably are a lot more like you than the outside might appear. So yeah, there's definitely an underlying theme of the fact that you know most of us human beings want the same things throughout our life.
yeah. Um, that's also something that I learned throughout my travels. That it's just so enriching to um, well, talk with people in general, as you said, just get out there, but especially learn about other cultures as well, and like in an interested kind of way, not a judging kind of way, just seeing. So, how do these people do their things? How is their or how was their life formed as well from their upbringing, and just um, yeah, learning from other people as well, because I can imagine it's a learning curve for you as well, right? Like, there's having all these conversations. I feel like it's just a great way to just learn and improve yourself in your life as well.
Yeah. No doubt about that. And, I'm coming at it from a very I'm very much an introvert at heart, but one thing I've found with us traveling is
Mm.
that, um, I have become a lot more extroverted, and I will find myself having a conversation with a stranger on, a street corner, or in a campground around the campfire, whatever the case is, a lot more than I ever would have expected before we started traveling, and I think that ability to, allow me to get out of my shell a little bit, so to speak, has definitely been a lesson, to understand. And again, I'm still, in a certain setting, I mean, I'm still going to be introverted. If I'm in a setting I'm uncomfortable with, I'm still going to be the guy who's, standing along the wall, staying to himself. Um, but in that outdoor setting and, with us traveling, I've definitely become a lot more extroverted than I ever have been in my life for sure.
So, um, it feels to me like um, basically the majority of things that you do on the outside looking in do seem pretty extroverted, though. You're always trying to give back, be with people, inspire people, try to convey uh, lessons to people. Um, I mean, let me just say that I would probably kind of say that I'm similar. That I also wouldn't call myself a extrovert, but I yeah just enjoy to work with people, talk with people, generally like surround myself with people and learn from them as well. But where do you think in yourself that does that desire come from then to do all these things and to put yourself out there to try and reach people? What inspired that?
I think all of us have some sort of like, inherent radar or, sixth sense, so to speak, where when we find ourselves in a group of people like that, we do tend to be able to pick up on a vibe that, you know, someone's putting off where you're going to click, you're going to connect. Um, so I think that's one of the things that allows me to get out of my shell, so to speak. And where it does certainly appear that I'm more extroverted than introverted. Um, but the other component of just wanting to help and inspire others, I mean, I think that's something that is inherent from, both of my parents, because my mom was very much a giver throughout her entire life. My dad was a giver in a different way. He drove truck for a living, so he didn't have a whole lot of time on his hands, but he would always be a guy who was willing to, write a check to make a donation to a good cause. Um, that sort of thing. Where my mom, she was going to roll up her
Yeah.
sleeves and, get her elbows dirty and do the work with you because she didn't quite have the same, um, after they divorced, she didn't have quite the same financial um, support, so to speak, is what my dad did at that time. So, she was always one to give of herself. And I think just growing up in that environment and seeing that, it just kind of came naturally to me. My mom volunteered at Ground Zero after 9/11. for like 6 or 8 months. She was up there working with the Salvation Army. When I was a young kid, she would volunteer for Meals on Wheels and take me with her. She would volunteer at our, Little League concession stand. And, I would show up, you know, at a baseball game for 10 o'clock in the morning and, wouldn't leave till, 5 o'clock in the afternoon because she was working the concession stand all day. So, um, I think that's all stuff that just me witnessing, um, throughout my childhood as I grew up, it just kind of came natural that like, this is what we do. This is what we're supposed to do as human beings. We're supposed to give back and help others, however we can. So I really think that's where that comes from is, from my parents and, with us, being able to volunteer on some of the projects that we've been able to volunteer at, you go in there, um, and the role is that you're helping someone else out. But then when you see how it, you know, helps their spirit and helps, their psyche and how grateful they are, you find yourself actually benefiting from that work, just kind of seeing that come back. I mean, we volunteered with some hurricane relief efforts in Louisiana on a couple different occasions. And,
Mhm.
again, when we left, um, even though we were the quote unquote helpers, we left fulfilled and with our hearts full, um, as well, just seeing the gratitude of the people that we were helping out with.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point as well. For everyone also, in general, to look how to maybe improve their lives if they look what they can do to others. I think that's a good sentiment, what you just said,
Yeah.
that it will also enrich their lives immensely.
Yeah. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Um, so, um, is that's actually interesting as well. So, did you do that quite some time that you saw? I mean, obviously, your schedule also depends on the appointments you have to keep, and you're basically scheduling around those things. You mentioned that, but do you try to especially go into some places that have been hit by disasters like that, as well as if you can manage it in your schedule and just seek those places out and see what they are like after the disasters?
If we can, a lot of times that's a little bit um, tougher than it seems on the surface. The first time we did
You know,
hurricane relief, it was that kind of mode where we just it happened to be an area where we had some friends. So
yeah.
we reached out. They connected us with some of the organizations that were you know doing some of the relief work. Sadly, it's it's tough to find those organizations sometimes. You'd think it would be easy because, those areas are in such need. But it can be difficult at times. Most of the other volunteer work that we do is actually done through an organization called A Year to Volunteer, which is an RV centric uh, RV volunteer organization. So the
Mhm.
second time we helped with hurricane relief was actually in that same area of Louisiana, but it was about a year and a half after the hurricane had hit, but there was still a state park in that area that had not been opened yet, because of the devastation from the hurricane, which again, a lot of people, once it drops out of the news cycle, a lot of people think that, everything's opened up and,
Right.
life is back to normal. And that's not the case. This was a state park that lost over 90% of its trees. Um, and, we showed up again a year and a half after the hurricane, and when we left, it was still another, I wanna say 6 months before the park had actually opened up. Um,
Oh,
so the bulk of our volunteer work that we've done has been through that organization, but we're also always, um, you know, open to opportunities that we can find along the way to help out a little bit and give when we can.
right. Um, so what I just thought about as well, is you've been doing this for 4+ years now, you said. There must have also been, well, well, maybe not, but I can imagine there also being challenging times for yourselves just on your travels with that lifestyle. Was was there any of that sort where you were really facing some challenges and trying to overcome those?
Yeah, occasionally, they've been few and far between, thankfully. Um, but there's challenges that arise with, um, just again, stuff that if you're at a regular house and, have a permanent address and not on the move, you don't think of, but stuff like getting,
Mm,
blood work scheduled for my wife and, some stuff like that. Or, um, you know, we, uh, we usually try to, our technical address at this point is in Florida. So then when we do get back into Florida, where we're at now, and we'll be here, till the end of January, it's a lot of getting all those appointments, um, scheduled and knocked out, before we hit the road again.
right.
Um, you know, but even those, like I said, I mean, they're few and far between compared to you know, the upside of the lifestyle for sure.
That that's very good. Uh, yeah, um, that that's very nice. But yeah, I just feel like that's also because from the outside looking in, that's maybe what a lot of people would fear, like with traveling in general. When I tell people, yeah, I'm going to be here and there, and um, I just made the experiences that the first thought or the first question someone would ask me are always basically based on fears. It's like, oh, but do you know anyone in New Zealand? Oh, how are you gonna, and um, like a lot of fear based uh, things. So I can imagine maybe you having kind of the same um, experiences when you were telling people about starting an RV life, or how was that with your friends and family when you told them that?
It was all across the board. It was everything from, "Wow, that's so cool. I hope to do that in the
Mm,
future someday. Hopefully we can do it," to, "Are you going through a midlife crisis? What's wrong? What's going on?" So it really was all across the board. But I think, kinda go back to your point about fear. I mean, I think in any decision we make in life, large or small, um, we can always let fear talk us out of anything that we wanna do. I mean, any decision you wanna make, whether it's a career change, whether it's, selling your house and jumping in an RV, whether it's writing a book or becoming a public speaker, you'll find 1,000 reasons to not take that leap, to, you know, not potentially fail in that endeavor, you know? And it all comes from
mm.
a point of fear, so I think it's only natural to have, some of those fears creep up when you're in the process of making big decisions. But at the end of the day, I think you just have to trust and, like I said earlier, have that faith and have your faith be more powerful than the fear, because the fear is not going to go away. I mean, there's still things that, we're fearful about in the future occasionally, but you just have faith that you keep moving forward and, um, you know, things are gonna work out the way they're supposed to.
Um, if if you don't mind me asking, because it's a question I ask a lot on, well, most of my in-person podcasts, but I feel like it fits quite well here as well. Um, do you yourself, do you have a religious or a spiritual belief that also helps you guide you through your life?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Um, constantly, you know, constantly praying, constantly, trying to listen to God's voice. Um, you know, when I'm out in nature, I can find myself, kind of closest to God and trying to listen to, you know, what his guidance is. So yeah, there's definitely a strong, you know, spiritual element to what we're doing. I mean, every time that, we leave one spot to go on to the next, before we put the RV into gear, we say a little prayer, just a simple little prayer
Mm.
to be guided on the journey. So yeah, there's definitely a strong um, spiritual understanding of what we're doing.
Right. Um, as you mentioned nature as well, and you having seen so many different places, do you feel like, well, how can I put that? Um, that where there is more nature, like where people are more well in tune with nature, but also just more exposed to nature in general. So rural versus urban areas, maybe, but not only. Um, do you feel that there's a difference in the people as well? You think that it affects the people whether they have more exposure to nature or not?
Yeah, I definitely think so, and that'll kind of go back to our experience in Alaska. With
Right.
the amount of nature compared to the amount of people, I think is a huge plus. And then if you think of an urban setting like New York City or something, I just don't know that as creatures, as human beings, as much as you know, we do enjoy that connection. I think if you get, 6 million people or, however many it is into a small confined space, it can be a little bit overwhelming for anyone. So yeah, I definitely think that people who are more connected to nature, um, are more grounded and have a little bit better understanding of life. And I think that's why a lot of times people who live in big cities do take time to get out into nature you know, when they can. And I think that's very important. I think it's uh, a vital part of the recipe to, being healthy, both physically, mentally, and spiritually, is to get out into nature as much as you can. I mean, even now, um, you know, we're we're in Florida. We're at my aunt's house, which is technically our address, and I get out and walk daily, but it's still not the same as walking on a trail. Walking through the neighborhood. I mean, it's still good. You're still getting
Right.
fresh air. You're still moving, um, but it's not totally the same as being out on a trail and in nature and enjoying that. So, um, yeah, I think nature is a major key to good health.
Um, yeah. So basically, I made the same experience here in Queenstown, New Zealand, where I'm working at the moment. And I think it must be like 4 weeks ago now. I also had the chance to hike one of the trails called the Milford Track, which is like a 5-day hike.
Cool.
And um, I really made the experience how freeing that was, how inspired I was just being surrounded by all this beauty. And um, the well, maybe not the most important thing, but one thing that was very apparent as soon as I got to the end of the uh, trail was my phone started vibrating because of all the notifications I missed in the last 5 days because there was no signal.
Right.
And I was kind of sad. I was like, no, here we go again.
Yeah.
Um, so, um, basically, I wanted to ask you as well. Obviously, you probably everywhere you go, you kind of have signal. We touched on the thing about Alaska, but you're probably not too much off the grid most of the time. But do you still feel that that detachment overall from society, like you're not in reach pretty much a lot of times by immediate uh, communities or however you want to put that? Do you feel like that detachment helps as well?
Oh yeah, it definitely does. And yeah, I mean, we're for the most part in spots where we generally have, decent signal. I mean, when you get out west in, Oregon, Washington State, um, even parts in Northern California, um, you're going to hit spots where um, you don't have signal. Some of the national parks, like Joshua Tree in California, um, the one
Mm.
campground we were at, we had no signal whatsoever. Um, and yeah, I mean, we learn to adapt. We usually, there's times where it catches us off surprise or catches us by surprise. Um, so we don't have a chance to notify our kids that, we're going to be off grid
Yeah.
for, 2, 3 days, whatever the case is. So sometimes that, um, gives them some anxiety if they didn't know about it ahead of time, if we didn't know about it ahead of time. Um, but if we know we're going to be in an area, we'll, kind of let those close to us know that we're going to be off grid. So that way nobody's panicking or putting out a search party for us, wondering where we're at, anything like that. But it is funny, like you said, once we get back into an area and you get signal, all of a sudden, both of our phones are, ding, 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 ding. And it's like, oh, we're back to it. I wonder how
Yeah.
many text messages are in there, how many emails are in there, that sort of thing. But there is definitely uh, something nice about being off grid as well. No doubt about that. And just technology is great, but I think we all need to have our pauses in it um, from time to time.
Yeah. And something else that mm, maybe, again, I don't really have that either because I've been traveling for a long time and I've never really had a fixed address for a very long time. Um, but something else that a lot of people have an attachment to is just like materialistic things. You know, you have your house and then you're gonna buy stuff to put in that house and you're gonna consume, consume, consume. Living in an RV, I suppose you have very limited space to start off with. So you probably have to be very conscious about what is it that I actually need. Um, so I don't know how much of that attachment was there for you before you started the RV lifestyle anyway, but was that something where you also saw, oh, I don't really need that much?
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. When we were selling all of our stuff, I mean, we lived in a 3,500 square foot house. We had been there for 20 years, so
Oh,
you accumulate a lot of stuff, um, and you find it stuff that we're getting rid of stuff that we thought we had gotten rid of years before because we hadn't used it. And I think that's one of the things of
right.
consumerism and materialism is just the constant you know over and over of just buying stuff and then putting it in a corner and not touching it again. Um, and for me, going through that process um, was actually very freeing as we were selling our stuff off. I mean, I had a basement that, had all kinds of baseball memorabilia, signed baseballs, you know, signed photos from
Mm,
major players and stuff like that. Um, and I really had no issue selling any of that stuff. Um, and now when we go into a gift shop somewhere, um, we know that for the most part, we're just browsing, because we don't have room to,
Yeah.
buy a big picture to put on the wall or to buy a knickknack to put on a shelf. We do have some stuff like that
Yeah.
here and there, but, um, the only time it gets out is if we're at a spot for a longer period of time, so like with us being in Florida right now for, it'll end up being almost 2 months and, over the holiday season, I mean, we do have a little
Mhm.
ceramic Christmas tree, sitting on our, you know, desk and, some little stuff like that, but, um, you really do understand how much you don't need, um, all of this stuff that's constantly being pushed at you to buy and to, you know, constantly be adding to the collection. We've got very limited space on where we can store stuff, and it is what it is. It's like I said, it's nice to know you can go into a store and you're not going to be spending money on something you don't need.
Yeah. It's sounds very freeing to not even have
Definitely
that
is.
choice.
Yeah, definitely is.
Um, all right. Mm, I always kind of ask a little outlook into the future. Um, it obviously sounds like you are very comfortable with your lifestyle. You sound like you're very happy with what you're doing at the moment. Um, is there any way though, a next goal, a next aspiration, something in the future that you're aiming for that you're gonna be doing in the near to far future?
I am working on my next book. Um, that's almost a constant, continuing to write. Um, my wife and I are actually going to be doing two retreats this this spring, which we're really
Oh,
looking forward to. They're going to be small retreats. One will be on the beach in Galveston, Texas. One will be in the mountains of East Tennessee uh, at a spot that is 100% off grid, like we were just talking about. So when people get there, they're not
oh,
going to be getting
nice.
any notifications till they, when they get there Friday, there's going to be no notifications till they leave on Sunday. And they're both, they're both music themed retreats. Music's played a huge part in my life, even though I'm not a musician. I always kind of have a soundtrack of my life, so to speak. And I've got two very talented friends that are going to be co-hosting those two events with us
Mm,
as well. So it'll be a weekend of just music and grounding and connecting and being around people who we're telling people they're going to arrive as strangers and they're going to leave as soul family, because that's another one of the things that has been a theme for us is that um, the number of uh, people who we don't share the same blood with, but we consider family, has grown so much since
mm,
we've been traveling. Um, and again, that's just a huge, huge blessing for us to be able to, um, love and adore so many people throughout the country in our travels. So yes, that's kind of what our you know, relatively near future is looking like. And we'd like to continue to do um, more retreats as we move on. Again, just a way to get people connected. So I think when you go into a setting like that, um, it becomes very rewarding for you once you leave.
I love that. I love the idea of doing retreats, and yeah, it just perfectly fits into everything we discussed as well. It seems like a very logical step to do these things.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Um, well then, I enjoyed our conversation immensely. It was super cool to hear your insights, have you share everything that you learned throughout life, and yeah, told us some of the insights you gained with your lifestyle as well. Um, so if you lastly just want to let the people know if they found it as interesting as I did, where can they find out more about you? Where can we find you online? What's the stuff you put out? And then obviously I'll put the links in the description as well for people to find it easily.
Yeah, the best spot to find me is just go to our website, which is www.journeyofmymotherson.com. I know that's a pretty long URL, so if it's easier, you can just type in danclouser.com, and that's Clouser with a C, Clouser. They both go to the same site, and basically everything you need to know is on that site. Links to my social media accounts, links to book me as a speaker, links to get more information or register for the retreats that we're holding. Um, Book signings, books, it's all there on my website. So pretty much a one-stop shop if you get to the website. Best place to stop, best place to start.
Nice. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you. I appreciated taking the time and sharing your journey with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And of course, um, so enjoy the rest of your day. And with that, bye everyone.
Thanks again.